I live in my mind. I try to understand things. I try to go at things rationally and understand things that way. And I tend to not listen to the body. And through the teacher training, I learned that there's a conversation going on between the two, and that the body has its own wisdom that needs to be uncovered.
The reason I picked Bo's program is because she has such an interest in mind-body, and that's something I'm very interested in. I've always been interested in psychology and neuroscience and things of that nature, and Bo's background was attractive to me. But more than that, it was just the way I felt when I took her classes. I was like, wow, I feel amazing. Why do I feel so good? And just wanting to learn more about that.
When I first wanted to become involved in teacher training, it was to broaden my knowledge and develop skills. So skills to be a better therapist or be a better yogini, and to really kind of broaden my toolbox for, in my practice as well. But it ended up being a lot more than that, a lot more than just being better at.
Learning what it is to be a teacher, learning what it is to create a space for teaching that is safe for every kind of body, anyone working with any kind of issue, and to be able to teach to all of those different people in a way that would be therapeutic, in a way that would create a community of folks who would be comfortable coming to class no matter what was going on, and even the more seasoned practitioners could come to enjoy. And I saw that, and I wanted to do that. And so that's what originally drew me to teacher training, and also drew me to want to become a teacher, which I really had no intention of doing at the beginning of teacher training. But towards the final months, I realized this is really something that I want to do.
Well, I had practiced yoga for quite a few years before starting with elemental yoga, and had actually done quite a bit of training to teach. But when I started studying elemental yoga, it was much more about finding ways to make yoga really work for a particular person's body, my body in particular at that point, but rather than trying to make my body fit yoga. And that was just completely different than anything I had ever... And it's what I knew yoga was supposed to be about, but the classes had never really been that way, and it was much more about trying to achieve a pose.
This was a fantastic opportunity to really delve in and learn the background and the philosophy and some of the more academic aspects of yoga at the same time as getting the physical, the anatomy, the kind of science that goes into the training is beyond anything I've experienced elsewhere. And then the emotional and the cognitive and the neuroscience piece of it really addresses the process of learning and of change and the real challenges that people face when they step on the mat, which very much mirror any kind of transformative change and learning that we're after in life. So putting all of that together made for an amazing experience, and I think it's grounded in self-study and svadhyaya that runs through the whole training, which was a great place for me to be able to connect my yoga and mind-body work to the rest of my life.
I had no idea how much I would learn about myself and the body and other forms of, or other aspects of yoga, like restorative yoga or pranayama, and the mind-body connection. So I was actually really surprised at how in-depth and versatile her training was.
The process of practicing yoga is really bringing all of ourselves to a challenge in a little several feet square plot of mat space, and the training was an extended opportunity for me to really witness and see and understand what the process of truly transformative learning is. And when it's happening physically, when it's about a pose, when we can see it and have the tools which the elemental yoga training really provides to be confident in joining people in the challenge of the practice, that has been invaluable, because it's the same thing that's happening with a classroom of college students, and it's the same thing that's happening when I sit down with a colleague around a challenge where we care deeply about people's learning, and yet we're bringing all our stuff just like we bring to the mat. So for me, I think I'm a fairly physical learner, and to have this metaphorical parallel space to try out different ways of facilitating and being with people through the difficult process of undoing past patterns, of trying new things, of making changes that are going to hopefully last and be fulfilling and positive. I couldn't do the work that I do in higher education without having that. I literally could not do it. There was a point in the training when I started to see the parallel of feeling the really other people's emotions from being in a class, whether that was teaching or assisting in a yoga setting, and then feeling exactly that same thing coming into a charged environment where change was afoot and people were challenged to learn, but in a classroom or in an office setting, and being able to make that connection and then try out some ways to both feel what was going on in the yoga setting, but also be able to realize that it wasn't all mine, and to draw some boundaries, has enabled me to be more effective and more compassionate and present with people in other settings where I only can hope, to be present and helpful as learning is happening.
Bo makes sure that you have a really well-rounded experience. So instead of just focusing on one aspect of teaching yoga, like anatomy, Bo's program is really focused on several different things, really grounded in alignment and safety, and then yoga therapeutics, so how yoga can be used almost as medicine or treatment for all sorts of conditions, emotional, physical ailments, and also a great background in yoga philosophy that we got with Edwin coming and teaching lessons, and anatomy and restorative, just so many different elements that are important when you go out and become a yoga teacher to know and have that background. So I feel like the training is really well-rounded, and we leave with at least an introduction to the many different facets of what it means to be a yoga teacher or practitioner of yoga.
One thing that really also drew me to this training was to learn from not only a yoga teacher, but a psychologist, someone who is in the field of psychology.
So I went into the training hoping to learn more about yoga philosophy, understand the anatomy of poses, why we do them in a certain way, and what parts of the body are involved, and get a sense of what is yoga and what are the benefits that it brings to one's life. And I got all of that out of teacher training and so much more.
I'm a lawyer, and I'm a trial lawyer, and I work on cases that are really emotionally charged. People who have been hurt very seriously, oftentimes a lot at stake. And before my practice of yoga and before elemental yoga, I was a 12-hour-a-day workaholic lawyer, dog eat dog, do everything that you can to win the case type lawyer, which is pretty common. So teacher training completely changed how I practice as a lawyer and really how I live my life. So much so that I started to see more success as a lawyer through this more mindful yogic approach towards practicing law. I actually started creating more success in the courtroom to create really a more balanced way to practice law, completely as a result of what I've learned in teacher training.
There was a moment during the training, and probably an extended moment, but when I started to make the parallel between picking up on other people's emotions, getting overwhelmed by that at times, but also starting to be able to draw some boundaries within a yoga setting, within a class where I was either teaching part of it or assisting hands-on, and feeling those same kinds of sense of what was going on in the room that wasn't mine in an office setting or in a classroom setting, which is where the rest of my work happens. And when that happened and I was able to bring the tools from yoga into the rest of my work, I think it gave me the confidence to be able to take on some of the larger challenges that we're facing in education right now. It's the work that I love to do, so what can I say? But educating people, providing venues where young adults and adults can take the next step in their careers, in their capacity to take on the world's complex challenges, and to do so in a collaborative and interdisciplinary way is vital. But it also means a lot of change for the people providing education. So stuff comes up. It's just like the yoga mat.
In the training, there's a large focus on self-study and kind of dissecting how you interact with the world, figuring out how your thoughts and your actions create repetitive patterns that maybe play out in different areas of your life, called samskaras. And analyzing those was incredibly powerful in the training because it allowed me to see moments in my life that maybe weren't working the way I wanted them to work or weren't as successful as I wanted them to be, and to analyze them with a new lens where we could find interventions, whether it's how we breathe or the thoughts going through our minds or actions that we take, so that you can kind of create the life that you want to live. And that's been so powerful for me as both a yoga teacher and yoga student, and then just also as a person, particularly in my career outside of teaching yoga, which is as a high school English teacher. I found that the training, as it went further and I got deeper into it, enhanced my ability to be present and yogic in my daily life. Also, whenever I notice now in an interaction with a loved one that, getting upset or the situation isn't working out ideally, I can use the interventions I learned in yoga through breath work or a restorative pose, and then come back to any situation feeling more like my authentic self.
For me, being a therapist, it's really important to work on self. So I think with my initial goal being what I can bring to my clients, it really became more about what I can bring to me. So that was something that I wasn't expecting.
I got the training a great sense of self. I learned a lot about my self-identity, who I am, what motivates me, what's going on under the surface, why therefore does yoga have such an impact, and what are the things you can do to intervene when you're having a bad day, or on a physical level, if you have an injury, what can you do to be therapeutic in a yoga practice? So I got a lot of self-knowledge. I also got a sense of community. I made some great friends in the yoga teacher training program. I learned from Bo's wisdom and all of the other teachers from the elemental yoga system. And I had a nice opportunity to just bring together different aspects and different interests from my life and see how they all come together and how everything is actually connected.